Before we get to our first demo, more Tablespace fun facts for you to consider. Tablespaces are one of two types. A permanent tablespace is one that is, well, persistent over time. This is going to be the tablespace that you use most often. However, if you're a developer in particular, you may make use of temporary tablespaces, which allow you to store data that will persist only for the duration of a session. So it could be useful as, like I said, a staging area if you're doing a data move, data copy, for testing purposes, backup, restore purposes. It's nice to have that flexibility to do temporary tablespaces that can be brought up and destroyed quickly. The tablespaces themselves can create two types of data file. Again, the very much so the most common is what's called a small file. That is just your traditional tablespace in which you'll probably have multiple data files. The big file alternative is a tablespace with just a single huge file. And there's advantages and disadvantages to each of those approaches. Chiefly, it depends upon the volume of data that we're dealing with in your Oracle database. Small file tablespaces are limited to a certain number of file objects. Not that you'll necessarily reach that data file capacity, but you never know. Nowadays, storage has never been more affordable. And with this big data push that's happening now in the 21st century, we're talking about terabytes and exabytes. It's just crazy the storage that's going on nowadays with even not huge companies. You don't have to be Google to scale up into hundreds of terabytes and beyond. If you're using big file, you've got a single file that can grow potentially much larger than a small file tablespace. Now, to use big file, you need a feature called ASSM enabled, and this is enabled out of the box with Oracle, Automatic Segment Space Management. This is similar to automatic memory management, in which we let Oracle control extent allocation. Now, if you want to get in there and horse around with extents and how many blocks comprise each extent and how many extents are handed out each time, you can do that. Oracle will let you be that much of a propeller head, but how many of us have enough spare time for that? I'm personally very grateful that Oracle is so self-governing. Finally, you'll see references in the literature to locally managed versus dictionary managed tablespaces. In my experience, locally managed is really the main way to go. It used to be in much older versions of Oracle, tablespaces were managed from the data dictionary. Remember, the data dictionary is a separate set of objects that exists in the system tablespace. Imagine, over time, all the operations that need to go on in terms of just housekeeping, the tablespace and how it relates to its data files and all of that. To have to constantly be querying the data dictionary for that generates much overhead. It's unnecessary. So locally managed is the default with Oracle 12c, and this means that tablespaces themselves handle the metadata concerning their properties, the data files that are within them, etc.